So I'd like to introduce our next speaker, Justin Query. Justin's going to be talking about the 2016 wildfires and what's been done since. Justin is Assistant Regional Forester with the North Carolina Forest Services. He covers 33 Western North Carolina counties. He's born and raised in Rowan County. He completed his Bachelor's of Forest Management at NC State University in 2002. In May 2003, he was employed by the North Carolina Forest Service as a Chatham Assistant County Ranger, and since served in various positions such as Service Forester, Education Ranger, Assistant District Forester, and Wildfire Mitigation Forester. And with that, Justin, I hand the mic to you.
All right, thank you, Thomas, and I really appreciate the opportunity to come in and present it to everyone today. So as Thomas said, my name is Justin Query. I do cover the western region of North Carolina, and I'm over all the fire control for our region. And whenever I come into this position, I thought, oh yeah, it's gonna be nothing but fire. I have found that since it's very training heavy, as with our agency, we have had a lot of turnover in it, and have a lot of new folks, a lot of new faces that require a lot of training, as many of your agencies and organizations do too. So this morning, we're going to talk a little bit about what happened back in 2016. And I'm not going to dive real deep into that, because I think the important thing here is what has been done since. We had an issue then, and what kind of lessons did we learn, and what did we do about it? So we're going to jump right on into it here. So the first thing I want to talk about here is looking at our wildfires. And I went on ahead and I pulled this one statewide. You'll see most of the rest of my slides. I'm going to concentrate mostly just on the mountain region of North Carolina here. But you can see on average, we have anywhere, around 3,500 to 4,000 acres, or I'm sorry, 4,000 wildfires per year. And I love the way this one right here, it really lays it out well, because it shows kind of a cyclical action here. And you could see we'll have 2 or 3 years of low fire activity, and then we'll have a bad year, and then it'll go back down again, and then back up again, and back down again. And I think that if we went back through history, we would see that that trend continue even further beyond just a 10-year. But you could see here in the 2016-2017 year, that was, in the past 10 years, that's the highest that we've had. It really spiked out at 5,487 fires. But looking forward here, as we go on into from 2018-19 through 2020-21, we've had a slow increase there. And looking at that cyclical action, my guess is we are due for another pretty heavy wildfire season in the next year or two. So it's not the time to just sit back and start resting. We all need to keep our situational awareness up. So if we look specifically at the mountain region in North Carolina, I mentioned before, we do have roughly 4,000 fires per year, but in the mountain region in North Carolina, we typically average a little less than 1,000. As you can see there, 2016-17 really pushed that number on up there. So with that one, it probably is above 1,000, but on average, if you threw that one out, we're probably a little bit less than 1,000. But that's what our wildfires look like here in the mountains of North Carolina, with probably the majority of them falling in the Piedmont, and then the coastal plain after that. So let's talk briefly about the fall of 2016, and as I mentioned, I'm not going to go just real deep into this, as I know that many of y'all were there right beside us, fighting these fires. If we think back to 2016, and we think, maybe right around September, October, if y'all will remember, we actually had quite a bit of rain, especially down on the coast. We had Hurricane Matthew. So I remember I remember leaving home and going down to Robeson County in Lumberton and dealing with, mass flooding, dealing with, just the devastation that Hurricane Matthew brought to eastern North Carolina. And, just seeing areas where, the flooding in the middle of Lumberton was, it was 10 feet at a lot of places. I mean, just destroying homes left and right. But then I came home from that dispatch to nothing but wildfires in western North Carolina. And, that just shows one of the unique things about North Carolina. You can go from 10 foot of flooding on the coast and come back home to the mountains and just, bone dry and wildfires as far as the eye can see. So, it really started somewhere there in mid-October, and, somewhere around early December, maybe mid-December is when things really started to fizzle out on us finally. We started to get some of that precip that we sorely needed that season. So that season we ended up having 28 significant fires, and significance kind of a hard thing to define. It's not always just a large fire. It could be one that it could be a smaller fire that is requiring just multiple shifts on it, or it has a lot of wildland urban interface on it, or or it could just simply be a large fire. Obviously 5,000 acre fire is going to take us some time to get that under control. But with these 28 significant fires that we ended up having, we had to call in incident management teams. We had our own. We had I know we had a type 2 incident management team on the Party Rock fire, but we had multiple type 3 incident management teams that we were able to ramp up and help manage many of these fires. And then we had to start calling for outside teams. I know we called in on several of those. So, but all in all, we ended up having 12 incident management teams deployed across Western North Carolina. And, at the peak of it, we had over 3,000 personnel. That was a lot of North Carolina Forest Service folks, U.S. Forest Service folks, state parks. We had just multiple agencies. It was all hands on deck that fall to bring those fires, or at least do the best we could to suppress them. But as we saw, even our best laid efforts, we weren't able to actually control many of these ourselves. It took basically the weather changing for us to get those under control. So we had a little better than 62,000 acres burned. And, at the end of it all, it ended up costing us about $52 million for our, equipment, personnel, just everything that we had going on there. So, like I said, I wanted to keep that brief because I think the important thing here is, kind of as Sharon mentioned, we're looking at sort of an AAR here. What did we learn? What kind of lessons did we learn from that? And basically, what have we done since? And so, the first thing I wanted to look at is obviously prescribed fire. This is the Prescribed Fire Council meeting. But I am going to go off of prescribed fire towards the end of this, you're going to see, because the story is a little bit bigger than prescribed fire. So if we look at the overall picture here, the two things I wanted to try to compare here was, prescribed burning with the weather. what is our rainfall? And I wanted to really try to see an obvious thing here, an obvious trend. But as you can see, there's not really one. It's hard to draw an obvious trend looking at our prescribed fire just against rainfall. I think there's so many other variables that go into this. So you can see there obviously in 2016-17, that would include our fall fire season. And then going into that next spring, we had that was one of our lower years of prescribed burning. We only accomplished around 5,000 acres through that fiscal year, and that is the state fiscal year, by the way. That is July through June. But then you could see, coming. We had a couple of good years after that. We had 2017-18, and then 18-19. We had a couple of good years where we were able to blacken 1,200 acres. But you can see when we look at our rainfall, and I only pulled it for Asheville, and I only pulled it for the months of February through May, which is, traditionally the months when we're going to do the majority of our burning. You can see those lines really don't lay out all that well to show the trend that we're looking for, because 2018 was really a historical wet year, but we can also see when we look at the prescribed burning we did there, we actually got a fair amount done. That was one of our better years. But I am proud to say, if we look to 2021, this past spring, we had one of our best years on record for prescribed burning. We were able to accomplish a little better than 18,000 acres. But then it kind of made me look back. So if we're looking from 2016 forward, I would love to have seen that line just continue going up and away. But we can see there that 1920 fiscal year, we had historically low year, and I started digging in, trying to find out what the heck made that happen. And whenever we break it down and we look at it by agency, it kind of tells the tale here. You can see in Western North Carolina, the U.S. Forest Service carries the majority of our prescribed burning. So the bottom, the dark green, that is the North Carolina Forest Service. That's the acres we burn. I guess the beige color there, that's the U.S. Forest Service. And then I wanted to throw in our consultants and private landowner burns in there too, and that's that orange color. And we're gonna get a really good talk from Phil Wallace and Wesley Skeeto a little later today, and actually I've got another slide on this one I want to show just a little bit more too. And then I had to just lump everybody else in. I didn't want to bore y'all with just graph after graph after graph. So I tried to lay out some of our bigger players there, but then we also have a lot of other agencies and forest industry doing a lot of burning there too, and that's the light blue all lumped together up there. But you can see in the fiscal year 19 and 20, the U.S. Forest Service had a historically low year, and that was really what was driving, or one of the drivers there. And I found out that they actually had, I guess what you would call an agency pause on prescribed burning due to some aircraft fatalities. I believe those were in Tennessee, if I'm thinking right. So, hopefully going forward here, we're going to see us be able to build off of that this past spring and really continue to see that trend go on up. And just kind of, 18,000 acres will be a thing of the past. We'll have this graph going a lot higher here in years to come. So as I mentioned there, I did want to throw out here looking at what our consultants and our private landowners are doing. And I think that you're really going to hear the tale whenever we hear from Phil Wallace later today on our PBAs, our prescribed burn associations. So the three colors we have here, we have our orange, our coastal, and blue is our Piedmont, and the green is that little sliver at the very top up there for the mountains. We don't have a whole lot of consultants and private landowners burning in the mountains, but we also don't necessarily have a PBA set up here either. So, we do already have those set up in coastal and Piedmont areas. And so I would hope to see the mountain region expand our little green sliver here over the next few years. So I'm not going to elaborate any more on that. I'm going to allow Phil and Wesley to talk about that a little bit later today. So what else has been done? I mentioned there at the beginning, it's not all about just prescribed fire. We've seen that. We just now looked at the numbers. But there's been a lot of other things that have been done too. Because I think in Western North Carolina, one of our big issues we have is wildland urban interface. We have folks moving into our mountain communities just left and right. Every hillside you look on it's just littered with homes, which really restricts, or I won't say restricts necessarily, but it makes it much more difficult to do prescribed burning when you have homes on the side of your mountain. So we have to look to some other methods, some other things. What else can we do to make that happen? And I'm going to start out by saying I'm not going to hit every little thing that has been done. That is much more of a task and a much more of a presentation than I can get in half an hour. But I did want to kind of showcase a few different ones here. So the first thing we did in the spring of 2017, we brought on a bunch of our RCND partners. And if you don't know what the RCND is, that is a Resource Conservation and Development Council. We brought on 4 of them. To the far west there, we have our Southwestern RCND, and that covers from Cherokee basically over to Haywood County. And then just east of that, we have our Mountain Valley RCND, and that covers from Madison County going south and east all the way over to Cleveland County. And then we have Blue Ridge RCND, which covers the high country. If we look to the northeast corner up there, going from Yancey County all the way across to Allegheny and Wilkes County. And then we have Carolina Land and Lakes RCND, which covers most of our Piedmont counties. Or I know this is we're supposed to be looking at the mountain, excuse me, the mountain region, but some of these counties do borderline and start to kind of bleed into our Piedmont counties there also. So what is our RCNDs and what do they do? Because we brought them on to help us promote wildfire mitigation. We realize that we have all this wildland urban interface, and we may not be able to accomplish just some stellar prescribed burning around it. So what else can we do? So one of the first things that we tasked them with is helping us out, conducting community and home assessments, going out and talking with landowners, talking with communities, pointing out some of the things that may seem obvious to us as fire practitioners, but not so obvious to a landowner that moved here from, say, New York or from Florida or something like that. So they really help us out a lot with our community and home assessments. They do a lot of presentations to communities, but other various groups, such as, like your Ruatan clubs, your master gardener clubs, just anything, where we can get some sort of a civic group with an ear that we can talk to, our homeowners and our community leaders and try to make a change there. We've had them do some stuff like creating assessment videos. We have a great one that's still in production. We kind of halfway got it done with Blue Ridge RCND, where we kind of walk through an assessment of a piece of property and showing them the ins and outs and kind of the whys of why is it a bad idea to have your gutters chock full of leaves, that sort of thing. And we're working on a part 2 of that video where we've actually gone in, we identified all the issues that we found around this home, and then we did the mitigation strategies around it. And now we're wanting to come back and actually film a follow-up video to do a follow-up assessment on it. We've also had them create videos, actually showing some of our prescribed burns. We did a great one. Carolina Land and Lakes did a great one out at Lake James State Park that, we actually walked through the prescribed burn and, all the way from your initial briefing to, the mop up at the end. It's great video that they produced with that. We have them write news articles and other publications. We've even up in Avery County a few years ago, we met with the landscapers of Avery County and surrounding counties to promote firescaping. A lot of these communities are going to use professional landscapers around their homes to do the work around them. And so, if we can get in with those landscapers and teach them the principles that we're wanting them to convey to the homeowners, we may be able to stop somebody from putting down, say, pine straw in their, around their flower beds and around their homes, to maybe putting down like a lava rock or a pea gravel, something, a hardscape that's not going to burn. We've had several prescribed burning workshops that we were able to do with state parks. Thomas has been very, very heavy-handed in helping us with these. Very well received. We were able to put, I know we did Lake James, Stone Mountain, and Lake Norman State Park. And we're actually able to show them a little bit of prescribed fire at these and, kind of walk them through the processes of that. Obviously the prescribed burns we did were very small scale, with having the public out there with us and just wanting to make it where they could actually see a lot of the burn. They've hosted community mitigation work days where we've gone into communities, done some mitigation projects with some of our partners, which I'll talk a little bit more about in a few slides here. We've had them coach our communities through the actual Firewise process. One of the things we found, most of your communities that are, we're promoting Firewise USA too. Most of them, the leader there is going to be elderly and may not be as computer savvy as they need to be to walk through that process. So we've actually had them help out with that process. And the last thing, or I won't say it's the last and only thing, because they wear many different hats, but securing grant funding for various projects, which I'll talk about a little bit more in depth in another slide or two. So speaking of the Firewise USA, yes, ma'am.
Sorry to cut in. I know you have a couple slides left, but you have about 1 minute remaining. So okay. We do have one question in the chat box that we'll try to get to, but we might not be able to get to it. So thanks.
Okay. All right. So with our Firewise USA, we went from, in 2016, we had 20 communities there that were recognized. And as of today, we have 51. And much of that growth we have seen in the mountain region in North Carolina. I am going to skip over some of this because I did want to talk about some other programs real quick. Our fuels removal program, you can see the picture here of this homeowner clearing out a lot of his the underbrush and defensible space around his home. This is something we rolled out a couple of years ago, and which will have contractors come in and actually chip and remove that debris for them free of charge. So our Nature Conservancy in 2015-16, they assisted on 7 burns for almost 5,000 acres. But the thing I really wanted to showcase that this fire crew has actually increased that all the way to 55 burns and over 20,000 acres. So we've seen a significant increase there. And then they've also helped out a lot with our community mitigation projects that I mentioned the RCNDs help out with. And then lastly, with I wanted to talk a little bit about the Grandfather Ranger District. Since 2016, they've completed 12 prescribed burns totaling over 22,000 acres. 3 of those were multi-jurisdictional burns, working with other agencies and private landowners. And that's even expected to continue to increase with the Pisgah Restoration Initiative to hopefully over 10,000 acres per year and 100 acres mechanical. And you can see down here at the bottom, this is one of our community mitigation work days that we worked with them with. Also, TNC was a part of this too, in creating some defensible space around the homes there. So with that, I know I went over on my time and I apologize for that, but if we have time for a question, I'll take that now. And if not, you can email it to me and I will get back to you with it.